Welcome in, fans, to another episode of the Two Line Pass podcast. I'm Randon. Here with me is Dustin, and we've had a lot of exciting fun. A road trip that ended in almost disaster, and then a homestand that has gone quite well as we approach the last few home games of the season. And what a ride it's been. And Dustin, welcome in tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. I feel really good. Wait, I have to turn on my lights. Oh man, I'm so unprepared for all of this. I have to turn on my lights so that I don't look so pale. There we go. Look, I have lights. There. Now I'm not so dark. But other than that, I'm really good. I'm really good.
The icy hand of pale, cold death reaches for you as if it was the playoff hopes of this Utah hockey club, which are hanging by a thread, still not mathematically eliminated, though. We are 9 points out, I believe, 7 games remaining.
9 points out. The Wild got an overtime loss today, so they only picked up 1 point. But that leaves them 9 points back of both St. Louis and Minnesota. We have 7 games to go. Both those two teams have 6. So we've got 7. The most we can finish with is 94 points. So if both Minnesota and St. Louis pick up at least, that would be 6 points? We're toast. So
St. Louis still riding that 10-game win streak.
Yes, and I sent a tweet the other day that sort of talked about how as bad as Utah's kind of come down the stretch here, they've lost some games that they had no business losing. The way that St. Louis is playing is sort of made it like it doesn't matter what you did, you weren't going to make it anyways. So it's kind of taken a little bit of the sting off the way the team has played over the last week and letting some games go that they shouldn't have let go, because St. Louis has just taken this by a stranglehold, and even if Utah had won those games, they're probably not catching St. Louis at this point. So their run has taken a little bit, not all of it, but a little bit of the sting off of it.
Yeah, it does help a little bit. Not for nothing, St. Louis Blues, just to remind everybody, fired their coach early this season when Boston let Jim Montgomery go. St. Louis fired their coach with the sole intention to hire Jim Montgomery, and he's leading them to a playoff appearance. So just saying, not unprecedented to
Are you
fire
saying
your
there's
coach.
Instead of a tour, we want a torts? Instead of Tourigny, we want torts? Utah needs to take a play out of the same playbook, off the same page?
Well, it's too late now, but we will get into Tourigny's comments. So that sparked some great discussion on social media about kind of the goalie situation that he's facing. So we'll get into that later in the episode. But let's just take a look at what we've missed since our last episode. Of course, they were heading on the road to a back-to-back against the Lightning and the Florida Panthers, which were 2 games that we knew were going to be tough. We wanted to see them in a better position of the playoffs going into those 2 games. It just wasn't to be. And so those 2 games where you kind of had already chalked them up to a loss for the playoff implications turned into must wins, and it couldn't have started worse. Sergachev's return to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and it was a great reception. He got a little video, a thank you for his time winning those 2 Stanley Cups in Tampa Bay. An excellent career there. The fans were incredible. It was a great homecoming for Sergachev until the game actually started. And we try to forget this one because it was the worst game, the worst loss that this team has suffered all year, thus making it the worst loss in franchise history, an 8-0 shellacking after we had commented and joked about maybe starting our own backup to prove that backups, can still win games. Both Veggie and Stauber got shellacked, both allowing 4 or more goals in, and it was just not a great game at all, in a game that turned into a must-win that came into an absolute not great performance. Everybody knew, even Sergachev said, I think it was Sergachev or perhaps Dursey saying everybody and their grandmother knows how that game went. But they did turn it around and go into Florida. They ended up losing in overtime, but a complete 180 of a game in terms of their performance to force that game into overtime. 2 teams, mind you, Florida and Tampa Bay, having everything to play for because that Atlantic Division is wide open. And if you don't take that first game, then you just have a harder time because you have to play. It's Toronto, Tampa Bay, and Florida. And one of those three teams are going to have to play the other. So winning the Atlantic is huge. And they absolutely snagged those 2 points that they needed against the Utah Hockey Club. But obviously not a lot of positive takeaways from the Tampa Bay game. But Dustin, did you see anything that jumped out at you or want to talk about for those two, that crucial back-to-back that ended up the way it did?
I liked the fight in the third period in that Florida game, being able to tie that up and take it to overtime, where they just got absolutely manhandled. Florida just completely dominated that overtime period. Little troubling with how long it took Utah to score a 5-on-5 goal. We went, I think it was like 9, 10 or 11 periods without a 5-on-5 goal. And the power play is right back to the early in the season when you and I used to joke about, hey, can we decline the penalty? Can we just like keep them on the ice and stay 5-on-5? Because that reared its ugly head against Calgary the other day. Luckily, it didn't come out to bite them, but there was a power play where Calgary got 2 legit, like, grade A scoring chances. Luckily, Vejmelka was just an inhuman brick wall. I know I kind of jumped ahead. You asked me about if I wanted to talk about the Tampa Bay and Florida games, but I kind of jumped right ahead to that last one against Calgary. But that nearly bit him. That game could have slipped away, but Veggie was just... And I've got to... If you're listening on the on a podcast feed, you can't see it. If you're watching it on YouTube, you can see my famous whiteboard behind me says Veggie, 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 because the man needed his flowers after that performance. So, brick wall he is.
That's absolutely true. And you look at the Chicago game, moving on past the Florida games, that Chicago game didn't look good to start out. I mean, it looked like one of those games where the team had pretty much given up, which was the case in the Tampa Bay game, at least. You know, by the time you put Stauber in, the game was well out of hand and the team didn't do him any favors whatsoever. But again, Chicago is kind of the same thing where you're just like, how is this one getting away from us? And luckily they pulled away in that second and never looked back in the third. But man, there was halfway through that game, it was not clear that Utah was going to win. But again, Veggie is the guy that makes this all possible. And against Calgary the other night, a game that I was fortunate enough to witness, you witness his greatness yet again. You posted on Twitter about how he's earning every single cent that we gave him, and he's absolutely doing that. He is keeping this team single-handedly still in this playoff hunt. Likely not going to win, but he's on his 10th straight start, which hasn't happened in like 6 or 7 years. So you just don't see it that often. And that kind of goes into what we're going to talk about next, is the concept of load management. And so Tourigny had some comments in his press conference, which we'll get to, preemptively addressing this concept of load management. So Dustin, what we're going to do, we're going to take a look at the clip. We're going to listen to it, and then you and I are going to have a little Lincoln Douglas debate, not in that format because it's been too long. I don't even remember the rules of the Lincoln Douglas format, but I very much disagree philosophically with what Tourigny's saying. That's actually not, I just disagree that Tourigny is saying it. Philosophically, I kind of understand it, but it's the fact that Tourigny's saying it, and it seems, well, you'll hear my thoughts on it, and you are going to defend Tourigny's comments as being the right thing to do. So it would be remiss if we put words in Tourigny's mouth. So let's just go ahead, hear from the man himself. This is what he had to say at the press conference to open it up. Take a listen, take a watch.
First, no change in the lineup. Same lineup, same line, same pairing. Unless only matter will be game time decision. So we'll figure that out at game time. To start, I want to address a little bit our fans and through you guys. You ask me a lot about the load management of Veg. I want to do a little exercise with you. I will ask the question. Do you believe we can win the Stanley Cup with Veg? Do you believe we can win yeah?
Eventually, maybe.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So if we expect to win the Stanley Cup with him, let's say, how many games that will take, you think, in the playoff? There's 4 rounds, 6 games per round, let's say, 24 game. So he's at 18 in a row. So if we get in the playoff, we get in a run, we're in the semifinal on Game 6, and I tell you, we'll load management Veg. We'll play the backup tonight. How will you assess my decision?
Very poorly.
Very poorly, exactly. So we're fighting for our life every night, and you want us to not put our best lineup on the ice? That makes no sense. We are in the playoff. We are in our Stanley Cup run. We are fighting to get the right to play game number 83. So if we were in any other situation, that makes sense. But eventually, Veg, if we get in that run where we aspire to win the Stanley Cup and we aspire Veg to be a huge part of it, we'll have to play 20-odd game in a row. And at some point, it is what it is. And it's the same thing for Sergachev. It's the same thing for Keller or any other iron guy. Load management in our league is 2 shifts less per game for those guys. It's not 2 more days. It's practice day, take a day off. It's having more maintenance day, which we do with Veg. The one who were on the trip you saw, Veg was not at the practice, and whatever we were, we had Hank was there for him. So it's important for me to share that with our fans because there's a lot of I've been asked a lot about load management and stuff like that. But we're fighting for our life every night. If one day we aspire to win the Stanley Cup with Veg in the net, he will play 20-odd games in a row. So that's let's say it's a repetition for the big moment. There we go. Now I'm all yours.
So those were Tourigny's comments, and I think there's possibly, we'll just start from the beginning. One thing that I think we both agree on, but his very first question, which I think kind of took the beat writers, is a little, I think it was our guy Brogan who's brave enough to answer, but we'll ask the question here. Can the Utah Hockey Club win with Vejmelka?
I mean, obviously not this year. They're not making the playoffs this year, so they're not winning the Stanley Cup this year. But yes, you add maybe 1 or 2 pieces this offseason, Vejmelka is 100% a goalie that you can win a Stanley Cup with.
And I 100% agree. I think Vejmelka has proved that he is the guy this season, and that's where I kind of want to start my opinion on it. So we agree that Vejmelka is the guy that can take us there with a different team. And then he talks about if he was into the playoffs, right? And he's going deep into the playoff run, and then he wants to load manage Vejmelka, right? He's in Game 6 of the semifinals, and he wants to load manage Vejmelka. How would he be perceived? And the answer is basically very poorly, that he would be a lunatic. And this is where I think the discussion kind of starts and where I want to start my point, and tell me how off base I am on this. But the concept of load management during the playoffs is one thing. The concept of load management in a season where you had your opportunities to better manage the goalies and you failed, Tourigny, to lecture us on load management now as if it was the playoffs is completely irresponsible of you. And no, we wouldn't expect you to start the backup, especially the backups that we have, in Game 6 of the semifinals. No. But Game 2? Game 3? Yeah, maybe. Let me go back on it. I brought it up here just to bring it up. So teams last year that started multiple goalies in the playoffs. The Boston Bruins, the Carolina Hurricanes, the Edmonton Oilers, the Florida Panthers, the Los Angeles Kings. Actually, scratch that. The Florida Panthers did not actually start the other guys. So we've got the Los Angeles Kings, we've got the New York Islanders, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Vancouver Canucks, who started 3 given their goalie issues, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, and then Winnipeg was one of those that didn't start anybody else but played multiple goalies. If the 16 teams last year played multiple goalies in the playoffs, it's not a completely foreign concept. I stated it on Twitter that the Penguins won 2 Stanley Cups with a goalie rotation of Fleury and Matt Murray, because neither of them could really seal the deal, and they both sucked, but then they were both good at the same time, and they bounced between them. And now Matt Murray's playing in the AHL. So it's completely different in the playoffs, but to say that you were going to load manage in the playoffs, no. But if you start a goalie, your backup in the playoffs when it's necessary, that's just good coaching. And that's what I don't think he understands. And that's where I start my disagreement with him, as even just the premise, his hypothetical, I feel is wrong. How off base am I, Dustin?
Well, I think that you just ran down that list of how many teams started more than one goalie in the playoffs last year. I do think, and obviously I didn't know that you were going to say this, I didn't know that you were going to add that, but I think it does lack a little bit of like context. Like, if you're starting a different goalie in game 1 and then game 2, that's a whole lot different than maybe being like the 2 seed against the 7 seed and you're up 3-0 or you're up 2-0 and you start your backup on like at your first game at home or something like that. Like, there is a little bit more that goes into that decision rather than just, well, they started 2, so we should be able to start 2. Like, some of those you mentioned, the Penguins, like, their problem was that they didn't have a number 1 goalie. Utah has a number 1 goalie. Like, there is a huge difference between Vejmelka and Stauber. Like, Utah's probably going to be able to rely on Ingram if he were still here and playing, but there's a big difference between even Ingram and Stauber, and I know you have something to say about that, so I'll wait to cross that bridge when we get there. But there does need to be a little bit more context, whereas like Utah is basically in a win or go home situation. Like, the series is 3-3 and you need your absolute best on the ice every single night. This is not a situation where Utah's up 3-0 and they can afford to give Vejmelka some rest. They can't right now, because every single game from this point on is a must-win situation. I said earlier in the show that both the Blues and the Wild, all they need is like 6 points to ice this up and to eliminate Utah from contention. So who knows? Maybe in 3 games from now, when we play Nashville on April 10th, maybe we can just turn to Stauber and say, okay, you're up because we're out. But right now, regardless of how much of a long shot it seems like it is technically possible that the Minnesota Wild just completely lose their minds and forget to play hockey and lose all but like 1 or 2 games from this point on, and Utah could go through and just win out. Like, it's possible. Stranger things have happened. So you have to give it every ounce that you have until you're eliminated. Because if that does happen, if Minnesota does, let's say, completely fall apart and they don't win again, and then Utah finds themselves 1 point out because they started Stauber against Seattle and they lost 4-3, and that's why they missed the playoffs, we're going to absolutely crucify Tourigny. So he has to put his best players on the ice. You are muted, my friend Randon.
It's because I didn't even want to hear myself after your great counterpoints. But an excellent points. You make excellent points. And I think we agree. I absolutely 100% want to make this crystal clear. I am in no way, shape, or form suggesting that our backups are more talented than Vejmelka. So for the fans out there, just want to make that crystal clear. But here's one thing that I do take issue with, and that is a trust in your backups, right? Because there was a time when Vejmelka was the backup, and we were begging the coach to show more trust in Veggie than he was given. So I want to go through a timeline, and I also want to say up front, like, complete sidebar on what Connor Ingram's going through. Connor Ingram, when he's playing well, is a phenomenal goalie, right? But just, we have to stick to the facts. This year was not his best year, probably in part to what he was going through. But to start the season from October 4th to November 20th, November 20th was when he first went on the injured reserve. At the time, we did not know what it was for. We assumed a physical injury. What happened came out later. So let's just look at from October 4th, opening night, to November 20th. Connor Ingram starts 13 games, and Veggie starts 5 games. Veggie, of course, has the better statistics, but in that, Vejmelka only got one game. Now, we talked at length multiple times about how he got no goal support whatsoever. So now he's thrust in a situation starting on November 21st where he has to be the guy. And he very much is. From November 21st through January 9th, which was the day that Connor Ingram was called back up after a rehabilitation stint in Tucson. Between that time, Karel Vejmelka starts 18 games and Stauber starts 4. Now that's kind of the rotation that we think on the high end of what we expected our starting goalie to get compared to our backup. That's what we wanted. And that, if you look at what Karel Vejmelka is doing now, that seems like a completely reasonable balance of the goalies, right? And in those 4 games, Jackson Stauber gets the franchise first shutout against Vegas, but he also gets 2 wins, 1 overtime loss, and has a 9.2 or .925 save percentage and a 2.3 goals against average. Statistically, smaller sample size, better than even Veggie in that run. And then here's where I get really upset at Tourigny talking about how you want to put your best team on the ice. That's what he said, right? He's starting Veggie because he wants to put his best team on the ice. After Veggie has that incredible run from November to January 10th, once Connor Ingram comes back, Connor Ingram gets 9 starts to Veggie's 13 starts. And it starts out Ingram, Vejmelka, Ingram, and then back and forth until finally Karel Vejmelka starts 5 in a row, leading up to his extension, and then eventually Connor Ingram's being on the IR and then into the player assistance program. So my tinfoil hat thinks that Tourigny absolutely would have kept a 1-in-1 rotation, except they knew that Ingram was going through some things. They hadn't yet announced it. They hadn't yet put him on the IR, but they knew he couldn't. And that's why Karel Vejmelka got those 5 starts towards the end, is because they knew, even though Ingram was on the bench, they knew he wasn't going to get the starts. Now, that's my tinfoil hat. I have no knowledge as to if that actually happened, but that's my tinfoil hat. And so that's what I really take issue with, is when it was clear that Vejmelka was the best goalie then, Tourigny did not give Vejmelka the bulk of the starts. Not really. It wasn't until Ingram couldn't go, and through the whole season, it's not until Ingram couldn't go that Vejmelka gets this workload. So my question is, does Tourigny actually believe in Vejmelka? Or does he have to believe in Vejmelka because he's got no other option? And that's what I have issue with. That's the problem.
I mean, I feel like it's obvious that he believes in Vejmelka. If he didn't actually truly believe in Vejmelka and he's like, oh, well, I'm only starting him because Ingram's not here, he'd be giving Stauber some starts against some of the, like, either the teams that you assume that you're going to lose to, or the teams that you think that you can go out and beat, even if you have Stauber in net. Like, that would make sense if Tourigny didn't believe in Veggie. I think that he has. I think what he was doing earlier, especially in, I think it was into, it was like October and into November, where they were going Ingram Vejmelka every other game. Like, that I think kind of tied back into last year, whereas like Ingram was the better of the two. Like, they've kind of been in this horse race, neck and neck, like Veggie's better, Ingram is better. Like, they started the season exactly the opposite last year, where Vejmelka's the one who starts the season and he's making more money, and then Ingram just performs better, so he becomes their starting goalie at that point. It's just kind of this, they've always been kind of back and forth, like Veggie's better, Ingram is better, Veggie's better, Ingram is better. And I think probably when Ingram is in his own, like, in the right headspace, and when he's actually playing at his peak, he's equally good as Vejmelka. Those two as your number 1 and number 2 goalies, you can trot either one of them out on the ice. But right now you have Vejmelka and you have Stauber, which I'm not meaning to take anything away from Stauber, but he is an AHL level goalie. He's not an NHL level goalie, or he'd be on an NHL roster outside of being called up because Ingram either gets injured or has a death in the family or goes to the player assistance program. Like, he is an AHL level goalie. I believe in him. I fully believe that you could go out there and you could probably start him. You know, you're not going to start him tomorrow against Los Angeles or Saturday against Winnipeg, but maybe Tuesday you can beat Seattle with Stauber in net. But you still have to trot out your best lineup, and I do think Tourigny believes in Vejmelka, and that's why he's always on the ice. Like, these are must-win games. I believe in Vejmelka. If he didn't, he'd be giving Stauber at least some action along the way outside of these games where they fall behind 4-0 in the first and like, all right, let's get Vejmelka some rest. And you know what? We might be 3 games away from relaxation time, and if Utah pushes this a little bit further into the season, we're 2 weeks away from Vejmelka having 6 months off. So he can close this out if he needs to.
I absolutely believe that Vejmelka can handle the workload. He's obviously shown that he can handle the workload. I don't even think Coach gave Stauber a chance. Stauber didn't get a single start when he was up. He only came in when Vejmelka was getting shellacked. The team had already given up. So, of course, Stauber gets shellacked because the team's not playing in front of him. Unfair to Stauber. And then they sent Stauber back to the AHL. Matt Velada's not better than Stauber. He's just not. And he's really not going to get another start.
Don't think they did that for the Utah Hockey Club purposes. I believe Tucson, thank you. I wanted to say Phoenix. I'm like, that's not right. So Tucson, they were going on a back-to-back, and I think they just needed Stauber down there to start a game for them. I don't think that was a send-down call-up because they want the other guy instead of Stauber here in Utah. I think that was just to give the AHL goalie some rest.
I've seen my minor league teams screwed over too many times by call-ups, and they never send us guys. I saw it too many times to give them the benefit of the doubt. Those jerks, if they make a playoff run, they can have all of our guys back. But speaking of guys from the AHL, here's another part, right? Because I think it's crucial to the argument that Tourigny's saying, I'm trying to put the best team on the ice. He said it at the very beginning of the season, and he's saying it now to justify. And I feel like throughout this season, we've seen time and time again, he has not put the best team that he can out on the ice. And if he is, I'm just not seeing where he's going with it. Like Kyler Yamamoto, I love the guy. I absolutely love the guy. But are you telling me that Kyler Yamamoto is better than Matias Maccelli? I just don't see it. And Kyler Yamamoto gets immediately put on line 2, whereas Maccelli has to play with Bjugstad. Like, of course Maccelli's not going. And then for the point when he was stuck with Stenlund and Bjugstad, he got high praise. That fourth line was amazing, that they brought the energy, and then he gets benched again. And Kyler Yamamoto goes to the second line? There's just no way. There's no way Kyler Yamamoto is a better player than Matias Maccelli. Put Maccelli on the second line.
I will give you a point there. If you're going to say that this is our Stanley Cup run, we're in the middle of this, we need the best players, that we need our best team on the ice, but then you're putting DeSimone on the ice, which, I mean, you could argue whether you want DeSimone on the ice or any of the other defensemen. But the point that you do have, and that I will agree with, is that Yamamoto's probably not a better option than Matias Maccelli, and it nearly cost us against Calgary because Kyler Yamamoto had a wide open net and sent it over the top, and then a few seconds later gets the puck back and bangs one off the iron, like back to back. Almost in like a 30-second span. 2 could have been like game icing or at least lead extending goals, because I believe at that point it was 2-1 in the third period. Like, very easily could have come close to icing that game, and he whiffed on both of them, especially the one that went over the net. Like, he had a wide open net. Like, Wolf had moved to his right and completely abandoned the crease, and it was wide open there for the taking, and he just whiffed it. Which, I mean, at least he got the stick on the puck rather than our own Nick Schmaltz in his fan company sponsorship. But yet that decision could have easily cost Utah that win. So yeah, if you're going to say, you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. If you're going to say we need the best team on the ice and that's why you're starting Vejmelka, then why isn't Maccelli on the ice? Because as much as he has struggled, he's better than Yams. Like, right now, he's just a better hockey player than Yams. And, like, I understand if you're like, okay, Kyler maybe fits more into the future of this franchise and we want to get him time on the ice. I agree with that logic. But you can't do that when you're saying we need our best players on the ice because this is our Stanley Cup run. Maybe in his mind it makes sense because you can only play one goalie and you can get away with, like, when you have 12 offensive players, like, to rotate through on 4 different lines. Like, you can put one there and it's still technically a really good team and a really good lineup, whereas you only have one goalie on the ice. Maybe it makes sense to him that way, but it's not logical, and I completely agree with you. You can't talk out both sides of your mouth.
Thank you. And that's what I feel is happening. But I do want to end it just one question. I want you to think about it. Let's say Ingram is still on the team. No issues. He's fully healthy. Do you think they are still splitting starts up until this point, or do you think with Ingram available, he would still give Veggie, we'll say 75% or more of the starts?
I think because of the extension that Vejmelka has signed, I think they're going with like a 3-1, 4-1 rotation, and they're at least giving Vejmelka a little bit of a break, but I think that contract extension is Utah saying, Veggie is he's our number one goalie. He is our top line goalie. He's the goalie of the future. He is our guy. That's what that contract extension says. So whether it's the front office forcing the hand of Tourigny or Tourigny like maybe just building a little bit more faith in Veggie, I think we would be seeing a 3-1, 4-1 type rotation, but mostly due to the fact that he signed that extension and less the fact of like less Tourigny making the decision himself.
Well, fans, you can weigh in. Tell us who you agree with. Do you agree with me and my hate on Tourigny, or do you agree with Dustin's rather rational opinion that this is our playoffs and we got to do what we got to do, and Coach has to defend it. He absolutely has. So thank you, Dustin. Thank you for that mental exercise. I think it needs to be said that Dustin is still on the fire Tourigny bandwagon. Maybe. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Are you still on that bandwagon or nay?
I at this point of the season, like the season is basically over. I'm okay with the idea of keeping him around for continuity, building something. The franchise has taken a step in the right direction. They are building towards what they need to be building toward. They've improved on last season. There's been market improvements basically across the board, so I am okay with keeping him just for the sake of continuity. But I've said it before, if you get into next year, especially if they go out and add a big piece like a Mitch Marner, and then they start off slow, you have to be quick to make that change. You can't just sit around. You can't be 20 games into the season looking at like an 8-10-2 record or anything like that. Like this team needs to get off to a good start next year, or else it will be time to pull the plug.
Well, congratulations, Tourigny. I will give you this. You do have your franchise high at 80 points, so congratulations. That marginal improvement. You're still improving, and I got to give you that credit. So, but next season, the expectations, unless we completely fumble the offseason, even if we don't get a guy like Marner, we've got way too much cap room, way too many assets to not make a splash. So we'll see. We'll see what they do and which direction they want to go. But regardless of what happens, I really think that Tourigny has to have expectations next season, and the expectation has to be playoffs or bust. Well, let's get into mail call. We've got the mail call. We did it the last few episodes, getting some questions from you guys. First question from me. I meant to do it on my burner. The Yotes shall rise again, 420-69-69. He writes, why is Randon so negative all the time? And why does he have such shit takes? Does he even know puck? Dustin, I can't even answer that, man. What is the Yotes shall rise again even talking about?
I have known Randon since high school. Like, I've known Randon since we were in, I believe, like our senior year of high school. We were in the same drama class, and I would slap him in the face with my Stridex pads. If you went to school in the early 2000s, you know, Stridex pads were like the acne wipes to clean your face. And I would just pull one out and just slap Randon in the face with it. So the fact that we are now God, what, 20 plus years later, hosting a hockey podcast together, speaks a lot to how much shit Randon was able to put up with and still be friends with somebody. So maybe that's just the counterbalance. Just like he puts up with a whole bunch of shit from his friends and stays friends with them, so he demands more of his hockey coaches. But I do believe he does know puck. Like, he's taught me a lot about puck this year. If you've been with us from the start, I was the guy brought on as like the, we'll help. Dustin will be the one that helps transition like football and basketball fans to hockey. Like, he'll make the comparisons from the Jazz to the hockey club, from basketball to hockey. I've done it before. I did the last episode talking about Jerry Sloan and how he handled his substitutions. So Randon's taught me a lot. I owe him a lot, so maybe it's just the fact that he's my boss, but he definitely knows puck.
Yeah, you guys just hate watch me, right? Like that's really what it's all about, right? Nobody watches stuff they enjoy anymore. We watch it so we can hate on it. So at the very least, just watch and listen and hate on all my takes. Like, that's just fine. That's just fine. I will embrace that role because somebody has to. And not everybody out there in Twitter world disagrees with me. There are some crazy fools who agree with some of the things I say. But I got to tell you, Dustin, this next question, I love it. If you want to, do you have it up? Do you want to take it away? Because this is a banger of a question.
So this comes from a brand new follower, followed us today when he saw the question at NoStamp22 on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it. It's a two-parter. One, would you rather have 5 years to build a Boeing 747 on your own with access to Boeing support line for from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., 7 days a week, all commodities provided. So let's recap. Build a 747 all on your own. You have support. You have access to Boeing support for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. I can speak. I'm very good at it, I promise you. Or would you rather have to fist fight Mike Tyson in his prime?
I tell you, this one's probably the easiest question I've ever answered in my life. I take the 747 all day and all night. I won't even call tech support because what is the punishment if I fail to complete the 747? Right? I have a half-finished 747. That's pretty cool. Everybody wants one of those. The punishment for even accepting the fight with Mike Tyson is I die. He just kills me. He straight up kills me. So unless there was some sort of reward for somehow, like, maybe, I got you for 3 minutes. Like, if I don't die in 3 minutes against Tyson, I get like $1 billion. Or if I, like, don't finish the 747, I have to fight Tyson anyway. Like, I'm taking the plane, man. I'm taking the plane.
Yeah, there needs to be some delineation of reward versus consequence for this question because, like you said, if all I have to do is build the 747 and there's no consequence if I don't do it and there's no reward if I do it correctly, then, I'll just, whatever, I'll try to build a plane. There's no downside. Although, it doesn't specify it. If I have to then, after I've built it, fly the plane, I'm fighting Mike Tyson. Because I am 100%, if I have built the 747 and then I have to down a runway and take off and reach cruising heights, cruising altitude, I'm 100% dying. That plane is crashing. I'm into the middle of a field. I'm dead, guaranteed 100%. If I fight Mike Tyson, I'll take one little nothing jab, go to the ground, take a 10 count, and just take a dive. I don't care. You can put money on it. I'll fix the fight. I don't give a damn. I'll take one just little, I'll slip it. I'll just prepare myself to just duck, take a glancing blow, and just go down. Maybe I wind up in a coma for a year and a half, but at least I wake up, right? I wake up, I go on to make my wife fall back in love with me after she moved on thinking that I was going to die. I at least get to experience more life, right? If I crash a 747 in the middle of the field, I'm dead. I'm done. I'm gone. So if I have to fly the plane, I'm fighting Mike Tyson. If I get to just build the plane and then it sits there in a museum, first time a monkey tried to build a plane and now it's in the history museum of airplanes, then I'll build the plane.
I like it. And you know, if you crash the plane, you have a chance to hurt your friends, family, neighbors, but it's just you against Tyson. So I think we're both
There's no collateral damage to a Mike Tyson punch.
Exactly. Decidedly taking the Bowen. But here's No Stamp 22's better question, the hockey question. What do you think is cooler, the slap shot or the backhand?
I think a backhand, because it always looks so sneaky. You know, just kind of like, all right, I'm coming from the right side to the left, and I'm gonna come over here, and then whoop, nope, I backhand it. Like, it looks so sneaky, whereas a slap shot is just like winding up and just pow. Like, just like a nice one-timer slap shot is a beautiful thing to behold, but a backhand is just so neat and sneaky and just kind of like, fooled you, gotcha. So I'm going to take the backhand.
I feel like the backhand gets all the love when we're talking about highlight reels. And I think under any normal circumstances, I would have answered that backhand. But Dylan Guenther has made me a believer in the slap shot. Even just hearing the word slap shot, it just brings back all those images of Dylan Guenther from the face-off dot just rifling him in. And so I got to take a Dylan Guenther slap shot over the backhand. But great questions at NoStamp22. Give him a follow. Looking for some followers. We talk about building the hockey club. He's got the Sergachev laser eyes. I think it's Sergachev at least. So got to be a Utah fan, right? Give him a follow.
I believe that's... Let me look, because I thought it was Keller.
It's Keller.
It's
Keller laser eyes.
It's Keller with the laser eyes.
Keller with the laser eyes. But
you do have a good point when you bring up like the Dylan Guenther slap shot, because there are times in my life, like, I don't deal with like depression, so I'm not gonna say like I struggle with depression or anything, but like everybody else, occasionally I get sad, I get forlorn, I get a little down in the dumps, a little dreary, whatever. And when that happens to me, think about that goal of Clayton Keller getting the puck along the boards on the right side of the ice and no-look rifling that thing across to Dylan Guenther, and him just pocketing that top left. The only downside is, if my memory serves me, that was the power play goal against Detroit, and everything went to shit after that. So there is a downside. But for a brief moment, if I'm ever down in the dumps and upset in my feels, I just think about that play, and it just brings me happiness and joy.
We can have selective memories and forget everything else that happened after the goal, and we'll say the game ended at that goal. It was in overtime, and that's how it happened. But it was sweet. And well, Dustin, we're running out of time here. Do you have any closing thoughts before we toss this one in the books?
Closing thoughts. Breaking news right now from KSL Sports. Utah Outlaws, Utah Yetis, and Utah Hockey Club logos and trademarks were all extended this afternoon. So the news that broke a while ago about they've extended the trademarks and whatnot of the Utah Mammoth, they've done it with all the other options now too. So you still have no damned idea, because that totally, definitely mattered vote that we all did 100% mattered, and definitely 100% decided the future name of this club. We still don't know what it is, and we can't read into anything about the trademarks being extended because they've done it with all of them. That's my final note, my final thought. Breaking news here on the Two Line Pass podcast. You're hearing it probably at least 12 hours after the news broke. So breaking news 12 hours later.
Money. That's what it's all about. Speaking of money, though, you know what will be money is our upcoming Fanly Cup series. That's right. We're going to have a couple of the fans on the show, talk about what it was like in the first season, what their experience was. We've got a bunch of people lined up, and if you would like to join the show with us, just hit us up on Twitter at the Two Line Pass. You can also go to twolinepass.com. Hit us up there. You can also read the blog, watch the episodes, listen to the episodes. It's all available on twolinepass.com. Dustin, thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for the spirited debate. Thank you out there for your questions. We appreciate it. Everybody, go Utah Hockey Club and have a great night.